And what I wanted to do is I want to introduce our next conversation partner, Jeremy Self. He is one of the senior software developers over at 5Q, and he serves as basically the primary software architect for the software platform, the SaaS product Journey. If you haven't checked it out, Jeremy is the guy that actually needs to be connected with you. Journey is pretty powerful, and so Jeremy himself has been a back-end developer in many different instances, technical advisor, and he's been doing that for over 10 years. And prior to 5Q, his professional background, is in large-scale, multi-site, news networks. And so now he's able to take that passion as part of the 5Q team and helping seeing ministries grow and help them innovate and connect with their audiences. I think is something that's his passion. When you talk to him, you'll see that this is the perfect chair for him, especially behind the Journey product of personalization, using technology to scale personal relationships. And he's got the paperwork to back it up. He's got a bachelor's degree in computer science. He's currently pursuing an MDiv from Southern Baptist Seminary, and lives in Texas, the big country of Texas, with his wife and 2 children. And the other side note that you want to know about Jeremy is that he's got a mean guitar. He plays with the worship band and teaches the youth at the church. And anyway, he's a great guy to know. I'm trying to bring personality, humanize it, because all of these speakers that we're bringing today are people you should be connecting with, not just looking on the screen and passively take a sit and soak approach. I think Jeremy is someone that you would definitely enjoy connecting with, especially today. So I'm going to hand this over to Jeremy. You can introduce the tech talks and frame it for us a little bit further, Jeremy, but I'm going to sit back and take some notes and enjoy what our speakers have for us today, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kenny. I am excited about these tech talks. So between the 3 people that we have speaking, the 3 5Qers, we have over 40 years of total experience in working with ministries and nonprofits, as well as working in the tech space. All of them have done multiple languages of development, multiple frameworks. So I'm excited personally just to even hear their talks. Kicking us off today will be Ian Banks. So Ian has been a software developer with 5Q for over 6 years. He's spent more than 10 years serving ministries, working both in nonprofit and agency settings. And his talk will be on survival of the Swiftest ministry in 2020. Go ahead, Ian.
Thanks, Jeremy. So first off, that last session, oh my goodness. It is going to be really hard to follow that up, but I'm gonna do my best to continue to provide value for everybody. So yeah, my talk, Survival of the Swiftest, ministry in 2020. 2020 has been an insane year. So we're going to talk about that for a second. A lot of us kind of came into 2020 kind of thinking this is our expectation. We've got all of these hopes, all of these dreams for what's going to happen. And then instead, what we end up with looks more like this. Kind of everything's on fire. We've got all sorts of disasters happening. It's been insanely crazy. But not all of it has been bad. Because of all of the events in 2020, a lot of us have been forced to adapt. And that is an amazing thing for ministries, because now we no longer have the luxury of waiting until the time is right to start updating our technology and updating our technology practices. So me personally, I have been involved in the nonprofit space for about 12 years and worked with lots and lots of ministries. And one of the things that I've noticed time and time again is that a lot of our technology is old and it's holding back our effectiveness for our ministries. And that's kind of a scary thing. We're called to spread the gospel. We're called to go out and minister, but our technology sometimes is a hindrance to us. And so if we're going to continue to be effective ministers, we have to find a way to move swiftly, or we're going to end up getting left behind. And if you look at all of the things that are possible with technology, and everything that you're told you should be doing, and compare that to everything that you are doing right now, that can be incredibly overwhelming. And that's totally understandable. I mean, all of us could be doing more. The question is, where do you start? How do you start to fill in that gap? So in this super short session, I'm going to try to provide a high-level overview of how you can start to move more swiftly, so that in 2020 you can start to thrive with your ministry and not just survive. So to do that, we're going to work on identifying bottlenecks. So we'll take a look at some ways that you can find out what bottlenecks you might have with your technology. And once we've found those bottlenecks, we'll look at finding the right tools to solve some of these problems that we're having. And then we're going to evaluate those tools and technologies so that we can make sure that they are serving our ministry instead of being a roadblock to what we're trying to do. So diving in, how do we identify some of these bottlenecks? So if you've ever heard this said in your organization, or if you've said it yourself, I wish we could do that, but our system doesn't allow us to do that. Write down what that system is, because that is a huge identifier towards a thing that needs to be fixed, probably as soon as possible. So that can be anything from our CMS doesn't let us update our content to it takes us hours to run reports on our donor base. So those are things that we can identify and write down so we can find better tools to solve those issues. Another way of identifying our bottlenecks is to talk to our team on the ground. So these are the people who are using these technologies. They're updating the websites, they're processing checks, they're running those database reports. So ask them what are their biggest pain points and find out what are the things that might be taking them hours to do for relatively simple changes. Because as leaders, we might not necessarily know that there are these issues going on. We might only see that we asked to change something on the website and it takes 3 days for that to happen. We might not know that the reason isn't incompetence, it's our technology. And then another thing that we need to identify is we all have our own bubbles that we're in. And it's important for us to have outside perspective. In every industry, in every organization, in every office, we end up just starting to think very similarly. And so conferences like this are great for us to get new ideas, to meet new people, see what other ministries are doing, because we might not even know that there's a better solution out there. We might not even know that we have a problem. We might be thinking, oh, everything's great. And so getting that outside perspective can help us to identify maybe there's a barrier that we need to break through. So now that we've identified some of our bottlenecks, let's find the right tools for the job. And I love what Brad Davies said yesterday during one of our breakout sessions. Tools matter, and software helps us execute with less people at scale. And if your tools require you to pay for an API, start looking for other tools. And in essence, what this is your tools should not be roadblocking you from doing what you need to do. And if that is happening, we need to find a better tool. So for example, if we need to dig a hole for foundation for a house, we can dig that hole in lots of different ways. We can dig it by hand, we can use a shovel, or we can use one of these. No matter which tool we use, we can get the job done, but only one of these tools will help us to get the job done faster, more efficiently, with less effort, and a lot less tears. But we also need to realize that maybe the problem isn't necessarily the tool itself, and maybe it's actually that we're not using our tools correctly. It's possible that we inherited some of these tools and we never had the proper training. And so in this case, maybe the right tool is learning how to use our tools effectively. So one example, if your donor system is not talking nice, or your CMS is taking too long to update, or your design software is too expensive, those are things that you can start looking for better solutions. In a few minutes, we'll be hearing from Nathan Ho, who's going to talk about a realistic example of how you can better choose a content management system that can better serve your organization. And then after that, we're going to be hearing from Josh Heyer, who's going to talk about a way that you can actually save a bunch of money by switching your design software. So your tools don't always have to be more expensive. They can actually save you money and save you time. And doing that can provide a lot of value, not only to your donors, to your constituents, to your users, but also your team, which is the lifeblood of your organization. So we've identified a bunch of bottlenecks, and we've determined the correct tools to use and to use those tools correctly. Now we need to start evaluating their effectiveness, and we need to do that constantly, because the tools we're using today might not be the right tools 6 months from now. And that's because technology is changing quickly, and it's not possible to jump from next thing to next thing to next thing. And it's not wise either. If we're losing focus and doing everything at once, we just end up scattered and all over the place. And so what we can do is we can try new things and we can test them out, and we can evaluate their effectiveness. And as soon as we find out something is failing to bring about our desired effect, maybe a tool is not bringing in the income that we want it to, or maybe a tool is still taking too long to accomplish our goal, and maybe it's giving us way more roadblocks than we had before. At that point, we need to immediately turn around and find something better. We can't be waiting 6 months to a year to 5 years to work on replacing this software. And a lot of times we might pay for a tool and think, oh, I need to get all my value out of this thing. So we might be in a contract for a year, 5 years, 10 years, something like that. But it's actually more effective for us to switch and lose a little bit of money than to continue down that track and waste our employees' time and waste the effectiveness of our ministries. And then once we found our right tool again, we're going to continue testing. Because again, the tools we're using today might not be the right tools 6 months from now. Everything is constantly changing. So we've identified our bottlenecks. We've learned to use the right tools and to use them correctly. And we've learned to evaluate and test. And I love what Stephen Boudreau said yesterday in one of our breakout sessions as well. Your organization is perfectly designed to get the result you're getting today. If you want something different, you need to try something different. So if we're going to do ministry in 2020, we need to start to move quicker and faster, and we need to try new things. And if technology is the barrier from keeping us from doing those new things, then we need to change our tools, our technology practices to ensure that technology is supporting our ministry and not hindering it. So that way we can make sure that in 2020 and beyond, we thrive and we don't just survive. So that's a lot of kind of high-level information. And in some sense, it's like, okay, well, that's great. You know, what's a practical example? You know, how can I do this with my ministry? What does that look like? If you have that question, I encourage you to come to the Ministry at the Speed of Digital breakout session, which happens after these tech talks. And we'll be talking to some of the Revive Our Hearts staff. And they were able to very quickly pivot when COVID-19 was first starting to majorly affect us here in the US. And they created an entirely new offering for their ministry that was able to bring a lot of value and help a lot of people during this time of uncertainty. So stay tuned for that. And back to you, Jeremy.